Hey, it's great to see all of you here today, and I'm glad you all signed up. You never know what you're going to get as far as a turnout. But one of the things that I think is really a draw to this evening is active learning, because it is a very, very hot topic, and we're going to actually examine tonight the contents of 3 buckets. We're going to look at active learning itself. What is it? We're going to look at some studies and some evidence that active learning is really getting a lot of traction, and actually many institutions throughout our country are beginning to change, not only by utilizing active learning in the classroom, but actually changing classrooms. And we'll kind of take a look at this. It's a big deal today. And then the last thing we're going to do in the bucket is going to have you try an active learning strategy that I have for you tonight. So that's kind of fun. But before we start tonight, and I kind of do this with all my classes anyway, is I'd like to know your name, your discipline, and if you've had any experience with active learning, and if you have, maybe what kind of strategy you're using in your classroom. That's going to help me tonight as well. So why don't we start over here, and again, name, your discipline, and if you've had any background with active learning. And again, I'm taking it for granted that maybe many of you haven't. So I want to show you a couple things here, kind of define active learning, okay? Because some of you clearly are just kind of exploring what is active learning. You're not quite sure what it is. So when I did some work on this, I thought maybe the best way to illustrate what active learning is to go to Bloom's taxonomy. Are you familiar with Benjamin Bloom? Anybody want to say anything about what his contribution was? Any thoughts?
Nothing really compartmentalized.
That is right. He has domains, right? He's put together some domains, right?
Mastery learning.
Mastery learning, right? Learning outcomes, right? And what are the best ways to get the best learning outcomes from your students? Okay, so I kind of went to that. So, what is active learning? This definition is a little bit more expansive than one I gave you a few minutes ago about anything other than passive listening. But it's where, and I heard some of you already say this, that the students are engaged in activities, right? They're engaged in activities in your classroom. It's more than just listening. And I'm going to show you some evidence that actually is almost an overlay of this that shows really what kind of results, what are the outcomes that you get when you are just lecturing. Now I will tell you, I have, as a biology instructor here at this campus, I have 1 3-hour lecture on Monday nights. I've been doing it for 5 years. And I have 1 3-hour lab. So one of the things that I've been looking to do is to be able to incorporate in my classroom student learning, right? As opposed to just lecturing. If you're lecturing for 3 hours, you're losing a lot of the students, right? After about 45 minutes, according to brain research, the brain just kind of fades away and you're locking down. You're not absorbing anything, all right? So this is David Bloom, right? These are the lower order skills, remembering, understanding, and basically down at the bottom here, we are listening and we are reading, right? Up at the top here, we are creating, we're designing, we're collaborating, okay? So this kind of breaks it down a little bit further, right? So what people remember, about 10% of what they read in the classroom, about 20% of what they hear. So if you're lecturing and that's all you're doing in the classroom, when they leave that classroom, they maybe have about 20%. Now I will tell you, in the early days, I was very, very guilty of lecturing a lot. Death by PowerPoint, which you might be familiar with, right? And after about 45 minutes, and you see that a lot in corporate America, right? Managers pontificating and whatnot. I had to do something different. All right? I wanted to see my students progress. I wanted to see them learn and take that information with them. And I wanted to see them enjoy the classroom culture more. So I had to make some changes. Here's all the passive learning, right? This is all the passive learning. This is where we're going to be talking about tonight, and we're going to be going through a couple of exercises toward the end of class. So students remember about 70% of what they say and write, right? So there are in my portfolio for you when you leave tonight a list of learning exercises, strategies that will fit into this category. And then 90% of what they do. All right, that's why I think I like labs, right? They're doing, it's hands-on, they're interacting, they're collaborating. So this is where the realm, this domain here is where we're going to be spending our time tonight. So that's analyzing, defining, creating, and evaluating. All right. Now, has this gotten any traction with schools today? It has. Things are changing, and they're changing very, very quickly. I've had, now a little bit of background for me. I'm at 4 different institutions. I'm an adjunct. I was a part of corporate America for 40 years in healthcare, okay? And this is my career now. So I go to different campuses. I'm exposed to different cultures and the way they approach things. I realized that in the classes that I'm in, again, I've had to do things differently and be a little bit more creative. So some campuses I'm at are changing more quickly than others, and they're adapting to this. This here happens to be the University of Texas Medical School. Okay, you're seeing this in medical schools today. This is the way medical schools used to look, the classrooms, just like we're sitting here. See all these rows here? How classes were taught. Oh, it's changed, okay? It's actually changed. And we're actually changing some of the terminology too. So at the University of Texas Medical School, this is the way they're taught today. They are taught in neighborhoods, and that's what they call them. These are neighborhoods, right? And now we have a professor who goes around to the neighborhoods, and each neighborhood has a screen, and they may be working on certain clinical challenges, certain clinical conditions, and examining these and collaborating with one another. That's the way it's going today, okay? So again, same classroom, here's your professor, here's a neighborhood, and these are all the students that are working together, designing, analyzing, evaluating, collaborating, okay? And as it relates to that Bloom's taxonomy, right? That's in the 70 and 90% retention, all right? So these students are learning a lot more today than they were sitting in those rows, right, in the earlier classroom scenario. Now, all right, and here's one more classroom. This is Dartmouth, right? This happens to be a chemistry class. Now, up here you have, some of the lab tables and whatnot, but what you don't see in this classroom, and you're beginning to see it in classrooms where they may have not built out neighborhoods, but what they're doing is they're buying new types of tables, right, on wheels. So these are all on wheels. So the instructor will lecture and say, okay, everybody get into your group. We're going to begin to work on a particular chemistry problem, and they can actually move their tables and get into these. So now we're really moving very deliberately on college campuses, the way we're designing these classrooms. I'm at one college campus right now, and they're doing a lot of redo like we are, and they're actually incorporating some of this into their classrooms. So it's really not going away, okay? The evidence is too strong regarding learning. All right, so in a moment, I'm going to show you a study that I did last year. So it is really wonderful when you're at a college, a community college, and you have a professional development department. I lean on them very heavily, right? Peter and his staff. And some of the other colleges I'm at also have very proactive professional development offices. Well, at one particular college that I'm at, I was asked to, if I wanted to get involved in a particular community of practice. We call it a community of practice, where we get a group of instructors from the college across all disciplines. There might be 7 or 8 of us. If we agree to do this and volunteer, we get together and we pick a topic. We pick a topic that we build, we produce something, we produce a product, which I have here for you tonight, about something that can actually help others in the classroom. So when our group came together, we had clothing design and fashion, dental hygienist, chemistry, biology, English, and a couple of others. And we actually came together to decide what is the topic that we can pick, that we can build, that'll benefit other instructors. And we happened to pick active learning strategies. By the way, I didn't know anything about active learning strategies at all when we came together. But we went over the list, we met a few different times, and then we picked that particular topic. Once we picked that topic, we began to discuss it. And one of the things that we did, and I was very fortunate because they had the resources, is because we picked that topic, there happened to be a wonderful conference that was going on in the Carolinas. It's called the Lilly Conference. And their focus in the August of 2018 was active learning strategies. So 3 or 4 of us from our group actually traveled there to learn more about active learning strategies. We came back and then we finished our project, okay? And I do want to show you some of the results of this particular project, which, albeit small, the sample size was small, it's pretty compelling, right? So I'd like to show you what this is. And I'm going to have to stand behind here and actually work the equipment, so I won't be able to move around the room. By the way, this is Adobe Spark, right? It's a platform you can use. You can build presentations, a little different than PowerPoint, okay? So I built it on here, and I wanted to point out a few things to you. In this presentation, you are going to see the results of a survey that we did with our students. So the idea here was to create a survey in the fall of 2018 that we were going to give our students just at the onset of class and at the end of class. Each instructor was to pick 2 active learning strategies. The 2 that I picked was a concept map and Thinkpair Share. Other instructors actually picked different learning strategies. And then what we did is we measured, right, pre and post survey, the impact it had on those students. Did it really have an effect? Does it matter? Are we wasting our time, right? So some active learning strategies were more effective than others, okay? Did these active learning strategies at the end make any difference at all? So I want to show you the results of this, okay? So this here is the group that I traveled with, okay? So there we had a pre and a post survey, as I mentioned. At the onset, we had about 127 students, right, in the survey. By the way, at the end of the survey, we had a much smaller number. We had about 78 because there was some students that dropped out, some didn't complete the survey. So the sample size even got smaller. But this is the group that I had with chemistry, history, there was English, and then myself in biology. And this was at the Lilly Conference. Again, I would really recommend, if there's any opportunity that you have to travel to any conferences, whether in Indianapolis, with the Falcon Conference that they have every year. Have anybody been to the Falcon Conference at all? Have you? You come away with great ideas that you can actually put into your classroom. In fact, prior to going to the Lilly Conference, I already had my 2 active learning strategies selected. And when I came back, I pulled one out and I replaced it with another based on what I learned at the Lilly Conference. And I'm glad I did. So I'm just going to kind of move ahead here. There was some significant results. I'm not going to go through all of this with you, but at the onset of the survey, comparing the pre and the post, students rated themselves as more comfortable speaking in class and participating in class discussions at the end of the semester. So there were some things that we recognized, right, really made a difference. There were some non-significant results. But as a result of, I believe, these active learning strategies, some students are actually much more comfortable engaging in conversation. Okay? So we see behavior changes in the classroom. By the way, when you do active learning strategies, this is very important. I just picked this up the other day in another conference that I was in, is you need to set a positive environment in the classroom when you're doing active learning strategies, right? Now, if you notice when you came in here today, the equipment wasn't working quite well, but I had some slides going on here. Usually I have music going on in the classroom well before class starts. I really try to set the environment every time I have a class. When class starts, right, students are engaged. In fact, when you set a positive environment in the classroom, what I found, and I've been doing this only for about a year now, is that students actually come in early to the classroom. It's a welcoming environment. There's a little bit of music playing, right? I don't have slides like that showing, but what I'll generally put on the screen is maybe what we're going to be discussing that day. It could be DNA, and I might have the DNA model. Pardon?
It's an advanced organizer on the, you said on the whiteboard or something like that?
Could do that, but I usually put it on the screen.
On the screen.
On the screen, right? So I'll have something on the screen, and then I'll have some music playing. And it also gives the students an opportunity to come in. They feel comfortable. They're already engaged, and they're going to ask you questions, and it's been working out quite well, and I'm going to continue to do that. I've actually had students that I've done that in classes where I've done at the end of the semester, incorporated it, and setting up, right, this environment, and they go, boy, I wish we would have done that sooner, right? Really. So these are the students giving me feedback, and we really need to set that welcoming culture in the classroom that they feel very comfortable in as we move into what we have that particular session.
May I ask you what kind of music you play?
Yeah, that's a great question. Who asked that?
The music teacher.
Yeah, thanks. And you know what? That's fantastic. Because what I do is I mix it up. Now, one of the and I wish I had it. Some of you caught the music I had playing on, but it's fairly contemporary, right? I'm generally not playing AC/DC or something like that, but it's something more mainstream, kind of upbeat, kind of positive. Sometimes female vocals going on. I have Pandora, and I am surprised at how many instructors are using Pandora in their classroom before class. Because I'll go in, I'll fire up my computer, and there's their sign-in. Somebody was playing Pandora, right? So they're incorporating some of these tactics already at some of these other campuses. But it's generally fairly, it's not loud and obnoxious, but it's very comfortable, easy music, right? So, but I use Pandora to do that, all right? So, what I want to show you here are just a couple of graphs, right? So in some we've seen significant difference, in other cases we haven't here, but class discussions are valuable to me whether I participate in them or not. This is the pre-survey, the post-survey. We had a little bit more agreement here, right? Right, okay. And here are the numbers that support that, right? All right, strongly agree, okay. Here's another one. Current comfort level, which with speaking in class or participating in class discussions, and we saw this earlier with the significant results, that actually went up. Okay, so by doing these activities in class, right, where students are collaborating, by the end of the 16 weeks, they're much more comfortable communicating with one another. Okay. Yeah, let me just kind of move along here on some of these. Interesting one here is Used email to communicate with an instructor. I don't know about you, one of the things that I do with my cell phone is right or wrong, I actually kind of tie into the server. I'm at 4 campuses. I came out of healthcare, so when my customers called me, physicians, if I didn't call them back right away, I lost a customer, all right? So when I get an email from a student, it goes right into my cell phone, and I usually respond to them very quickly. My students really appreciate that, okay? So, but actually here we've seen a change, pre and post. I think more of the students, instead of communicating via email, were more comfortable communicating directly with me, right, and chatting with me, right? So I think we established a little bit of a rapport during the semester, right, during this period. Now,
can I ask you a question?
yes,
Is that for a lecture class or online?
this is for lecture. Okay, I've not. These are all face-to-face. Okay, I haven't done anything with active learning online. I've taught online, but I haven't really done anything with that. Okay, now, any other questions at this point?
When you say that more students were chatting with you, was that in person or
Yes,
over
in person.
over the phone or something?
And you know what I think it is? Remember I said I kind of set the culture in the classroom early, right? Set the culture, a very comfortable environment. Students will come in early. They'll bring a sandwich, right? They'll bring something to drink. And they'll come in early and they'll talk to me, right? A little bit of music playing, very relaxing, right? And I think some of those students were decompressing. Who knows what their day was like, right? But I'm always early for my classes. I'm always at least a half hour, 45 minutes early. I like to set things up, have them ready. I like to be available. As an adjunct, I don't have an office. So I try to make myself available before a class, okay? And they do appreciate it, and I think that's what was reflected in this particular graph. Now, as I mentioned before, our group, my team, what we call a COP, right, community of practice, we each had to pick only 2 active learning strategies. So we really had to think about what we wanted because we were going to be stuck with that for the next 16 weeks. This is the one that I have been using prior to this. I use concept maps. Some people call them mind maps, right? And it's a way of taking a concept and connecting details and vocabulary to this particular concept. Very important. I get a lot of feedback from non-science majors and science majors regarding concept maps. Look at how many found it very valuable in my course. Almost 70%. Okay? Somewhat valuable. So when you look at it, we have a little over 80, 90% of the students look at concept maps is very valuable. I highly recommend that if that fits into your particular discipline. Okay.
What's also noticeable is below neutral, it's 0%.
Yeah.
Obviously, it's obvious on top. It's like what also shouts out to me is, no one
Right.
said anything about.
They found them helpful.
Right.
Right? But this was not number 1. This was number 2. Anybody hear of Kahoot?
No.
Do you use Kahoot?
We just did it.
Did you? Did you? That was number 1. Now, I've never used Kahoot because what do you have to do with Kahoot? What's the requirements with Kahoot? You need a phone, right? You need a phone. And some instructors are much better at rallying the students, right, with the phone. They're using them anyway, right? Now you're using them as a tool in the classroom. So let me show you that. By the way, there's some other activities here that I want to go over. In a packet that I have for you that you're going to take with you tonight are, 25 or 30 different active learning strategies in here. And they're actually organized in buckets, right? So I'll kind of explain that before you leave tonight when I hand them out. But here's hands-on partner activities. I'd never used this, but you can see also it's quite favorable, right? Students really enjoyed doing this. There's Kahoot. Look at Kahoot. Look at that. Wow. So, you know, it almost kind of tempts me to want to try to use Kahoot. In fact, Peter and I talked in the past about clickers, right? You want to make sure the electronics is working. You don't want to have any hiccups and faux pas in the classroom, right? And that's going to be part of our exercise tonight, by the way. What's preventing you from doing active learning strategies? Okay, we'll talk about that. So there's Kahoot. I forget what instructor that was using. Yes?
So yeah, I use Kahoot right before every exam. So it's sort of their time to go over some of this stuff, and it helps them think about their questions that they would have, you know, so it's kind of a review time a little bit. But then I also will give a few points to the top winners, so that encourages
There's the
everybody
incentive.
to do it. Because some students will say, I don't want to do it, I'll just
Yeah.
sit here. You know, they don't want to get into it.
How's the level of participation with Kahoot? Do you have
They like
everybody?
it 100%.
100%?
Yeah, if they know that they could
Some point.
get extra credit.
So they bring their phone and,
They all bring their phone,
Right.
yeah, but that didn't used to be, I mean, 10 years ago when I started,
Right.
I would have a couple students, you know, well, probably, I started doing Kahoot maybe 5 years ago. You would have some students then even that didn't have a phone with them, and so then, yeah, you didn't want to leave people
yeah,
out.
right.
But now, 100%, I
Yeah.
never have an issue.
And, you know, based on what you're saying and based on the results here, you know, I'm considering kind of branching out. Sometimes you got to take chances and you want to try some things, right?
Quick little fun
They,
thing for
they're
them,
actually
yeah.
doing Kahoot in middle school now. So.
Yeah, actually.
Yeah, yes.
20% of the students,
With their
maybe
phone?
25,
Yep.
already have done it.
Yeah.
Classes.
Yes,
Oh, okay.
yes. Once in a while I substitute teach. I go to the middle school, the high school, and I'll do it just to stay connected. And I notice that they're using it at that level, right?
They get super excited about it.
Yeah, they're very excited about Kahoot, right? So by the time they get through high school into college, Kahoot's like a no-brainer, right?
It's a gift, yeah.
Right? So,
For me, because I'm not used to it.
Quick Write, there was another,
What's that?
and they're all defined. I've got them in my listing for you. Structured group discussions, right? Student-led discussion. Look at that, right? That, right? Kind of took a little bit of dip somewhat, right? I think you have to have a good leader if you're going to be student-led, right? Otherwise it goes south pretty quickly.
You really have to be a moderator or a facilitator.
Yes, right.
Yeah. Instead of being a
And
lecturer, you're a facilitator.
yes, yes. So there's the Thinkpair Share. This is what I use, and this is what you're going to do tonight, all right? So you're going to get in groups of 2 in a little while, right? And you're going to do a Thinkpair Share. Here's the results, right? Now, of course, here I didn't, you know, I got a couple said not interested, right? I didn't find any value in it. But we did have a large chunk, about 70%, found Thinkpair Share very helpful, okay? I like to use it in my classroom. And here's how I've evolved with my active learning in the classroom. I always keep active learning strategies in my back pocket, and I'll tell you why. So I'm lecturing on cellular respiration or photosynthesis. Those are very difficult concepts. And if I'm looking over the classroom, and you know what I'm talking about, and you see a glaze in their eye, you know, I might stop and say, okay, everybody, we're going to do a Thinkpair Share. What I would like you to do is I would like you to, we're going to focus on glycolysis. I want you to think about what that is. And then I want you to pair up with somebody. I want you to share with them what you believe glycolysis is all about. Okay? Now, I have actually had students, and I have a number of students, as many of us do, where English is their second language, right? So when you're lecturing and you're standing in front of a classroom, sometimes it's challenging for them. But what I've observed is when they get into a little group, they're more comfortable, they can ask questions, they can have more conversation, they're discussing, they're collaborating, and that material is now coming at them from a different angle, right? And I've had students at the end of a lecture come up to me and go, boy, you know that cellular respiration, by the time you got done with the lecture, I wasn't sure I really got all that. But when we did the concept map, where we did Thinkpair Share, it all came together. You know, so I get this feeling, you may get that feeling. In fact, one of you, I think, mentioned that about students coming back to you with some of the things that you're doing, these active learning strategies, and saying, keep doing it, because it does help. So these are all of the different types of learning strategies we used in our classroom. So what was the takeaway, right? So we had several different disciplines, very different. We all had to pick 2 different learning strategies. We had a pre-survey and a post-survey. What was the results at the end of the semester? I mean, this is where the rubber meets the road, right? I was more engaged in this course compared to my other courses this term. Let's see how the students recorded this. So, almost 25% strongly agree, 52% agree, and then this. So, about, 75% of the students in our classes as an aggregate felt more engaged in our classes than the other classes they took that semester via active learning strategies. So this is a small study, but again, if you're skeptical, if you're wondering, there's lots of data out there. Just do the search. It's evident, and the world is changing very quickly regarding these active learning strategies. This is why I'm trying to encourage you, when you leave this room tonight, to give it a try. Pick a strategy out, okay? Now, any other questions at this point? All right, it is 6:30. It is 6:30. So what I would like to do is find a partner, okay? Find a partner, somebody you can work with. We're going to do a Thinkpair Share. Get comfortable with somebody. Do we have an even number here? Everybody got a partner?
No.
Yes, please eat. Yeah, please go and eat if you guys have
That's what I thought.
Partner? Partner?
Any of those 3.
I mean, you too?
Yeah.
I'm going to hand this out. How are we doing?
Great.
Good? All right.
Yes.
Doing all right? Yes, grab some food. Did I give one to you? You guys.
One per pair. Or one
I'm going to let you hang on to these, okay? I'll let you hang on. Peter, would you like one? I'm just going to ask you to pass those down if you don't mind. Thank you very much. Here we go.
Am I saying your name correctly?
Yes. Yes. Actually, it is Frederick. Most people call me just Fred. There you go.
Yeah, it's in person. Families is online. Intro in person.
We've all been up there where no one wants to say.
When I graduated high school, I put it on for college and it wasn't on the radar. I wanted to, but it just wasn't feasible. So I started working right away.
All right, let me grab your attention. I think we're here till what time? 6:45-ish? Okay, so we're going to try to end on time. Okay, so you could be on your way. Here's what we're going to do. So this would be a Thinkpair Share. So what I would like you to do in a moment is I want you to look at the top half of this paper, okay? And at the top half, and I'll describe what's on the top half, what obstacles or barriers prevent faculty from using active learning strategies? And here we have 6 commonly mentioned obstacles. What I would like you to do by yourself in a moment is read those obstacles. I would like you to select one that you might believe to be preventing you from executing an active learning strategy in the classroom. So we'll take a couple of minutes to do that, and then I'm going to ask you to turn to the person next to you, and then you exchange that information. Maybe you have the same obstacle, maybe you don't, okay? And then I'm going to ask for volunteers. And let's talk about these obstacles, right? Because I've faced similar obstacles, right? I'm a little bit further ahead probably in this process than you, and maybe I have some solutions. So go ahead and read it. Let's take a couple of minutes, pick one out that you might find relevant. Ready to roll? We good? We good? All right. We only have about 10 minutes left, and I have one more item for you before you leave. So would anybody or any group like to volunteer what you are most concerned about as an obstacle? Yes.
So I should talk about what Ron said, right?
You could talk about your own.
Oh, my own, I picked A. With sociology, there's so many concepts and terms and theories and theorists and processes that sometimes I feel or when I do, and like that stratification exercise, Monopoly, right? Am I not wasting the class time, but am I going to get through all my other concepts? And then sometimes I was telling Ron, letting go of that idea that, I should be engaged in that minute in their learning rather than just letting them learn on their own. Does that make sense?
It does.
I've been doing this exercise for 15 years or 10 years, and it always comes out great. It's one of their top favorites on my evals, but I still sometimes think I'm not being a quote-unquote good teacher or lecturer by not engaging in the learning. Even though I walk around and say, how's it going? It's still, when I was in college, it was all lecture. So that it's hard to kind of let go of that concept. Although I know it works, it's hard to let go.
And I think well, first of all, I shared the same concern because in science, you are shoveling information at them, and you're lecturing, and you're lecturing. And in fact, I was evaluated by one campus, and you just need to keep shoveling, right? You can't really kind of do any detours, right? But we have to go back to what this is all about, right? What is the results of active learning? It's retention.
And they retained.
And they retain that, right? And that's the value. If we continue just to lecture and we're talking heads, they're not going to leave with a lot of information. And I will say, just very quickly, when graduate school, I took a course in phycology, which is a study of algae. On Wednesday nights, I would show up. At 6 o'clock, the professor would come in with his folder, open it up, and read. For 3 hours, we had a 15-minute break. I do not remember much from that class. Right? Laboratory classes I do. Those instructors that engaged us I do. But I walked away empty. It was unfortunate.
So F is definitely not one of the top picks on your menu here. Because students love interactive learning.
They do. They really, really do, right? But again, when I got that graduate degree, it was a long time ago, too, and a lot of this stuff. And remember, David Bloom, this whole thing started back in the 50s, and it's been a work in process, and this whole thing with active learning and collaborative and design work was really kind of established in the early 2000s. So this has been a work in process with the Blooms. Yes?
Now, remember, I'm coming from Sheldon Cooper land here. But, I picked F. I didn't attempted to do an in-class experiment technique once, and it says everybody pair up, and they all did this. None of them wanted anything to do with anybody else. I'm here, I got my thing, I'm in competition with all these people, and please condense and tell me when I can go. And they all sat there for 5 minutes. I'm like, anybody gonna say anything? And I think it's a different population than some of the others. But for me, it's trying to get them together. I've had people that they've done labs for 5 or 6 weeks. They don't know their names. You say you have to put your lab partner's name on your lab report. They would pass it around so everyone could sign it. Nobody knew who they were. The standoffishness is very difficult to overcome for them.
Yeah, that's unfortunate. It is.
Can I say a couple of suggestions on that? So one thing, What I do, you can just go online and just search like group maker, group generator. So I put all my students' names in there, and then I say how many groups, like pairs of 2 or 3 or 4, and I hit it, and then they see all their names, and they're like, okay, that's your group, go find them. And they'll just sit there for a long time, and I'm like, ask who they are, like you have to go, to find them, let's go. So they'll go around, and then the other thing, say it's like a worksheet, I say, you're all gonna work on this together, and you have to put everybody's name on it, in your group, and when they turn it in, if anybody in the group gets anything wrong, you all get it wrong, even if it's right on your paper. That way, the idea is that they're helping teach each other how to do it. They all have to, make sure they're otherwise they'll just.
That's a good.
It's those things that they take more work, because you've got to plug in all their names and.
That's the concept where I've seen it
It's
in
something
my
to do.
clientele. That's where the pushback is. I'm helping someone else that I'm in competition with.
Yeah, but
There's only so many slots where we're going. I want
Yeah.
to make it. I want you to not make it.
Oh, I see. Because so in your field,
Yeah.
they're seeing this as
It's
a spot
much more
they're
cutthroat.
taking.
What is your discipline?
Physics.
Physics, and these are all transfer students going to usually Big Ten
But
schools.
their A is not contingent upon somebody
Yeah,
else's,
it
is
shouldn't be.
Well, I'm not saying this
Big
is
deal.
logical.
Right, right.
And I'm not pleading their case, I'm
Should
just
be,
saying
right?
this is
Yeah.
some of the.
Well, maybe if you
background.
start the class off and say, what the environment's going to be, and
Yeah.
encourage that. But here's another suggestion for that. This is just a basic one we've done in business. You have them all stand up and you count 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. Just count out the numbers. Okay, all the ones over here, all the 2s over there, all the 3s over there. So it's just random. Like you didn't have to do anything,
Yeah.
and they saw you not doing anything. So they're forced to go into those groups right there and then. And it worked very well
Yeah.
in my class.
Yeah, and you could try different things, right? Establishing the first day, kind of that culture in the classroom. Maybe, you throttle down that competitive element that exists between all of them somehow, right? I like what you mentioned, Lisa, having them work together, being forced to work together as a team, right? And getting a grade, based on that.
They do always pair up where there's somebody in the group that's strong. and
Yeah.
There's somebody that has no idea what's going on.
Right,
And
right.
having the other student teach them
Right.
is,
But
Yeah.
if you see,
is
like,
different.
I mean, there's a lot of commercials right now, like with Rush University, and how the doctors are all collaborating together. What a great approach to
Yeah.
have all your doctors talk.
Right.
Because they can't possibly know everything. And that's the thing, they can't possibly know everything. We were just in the last session, and I'm not good at chemistry, I'm good at management, but not at chemistry. But we were just talking about that, is that the way I was looking at the answers was different because my brain works differently. And the other 3 need to, we need to slow down a little bit because I looked at it. But then you respected my perspective, like we started to appreciate that. But it's the moderator or the facilitator, the instructor, that needs to watch that because it could get out of control.
Right, it has to be managed.
They don't,
Right.
they don't know what they don't know how to manage. And we do, we have to watch
Right.
that for them.
Yeah. No, you're right on. Anybody else? Anybody else want to offer anything?
I would say in the case of the competition, let's face it, if they're going to be engineers, they're going to be working together in groups when they get out in the real world. That's what you need to tell them.
No.
What about the show House? Has anyone ever seen the doctor show House? It's all about diagnosing obscure conditions, and all the physicians meet and collaborate from their different perspectives. Just the way one of them might be a blood specialist, one of them.
Nice.
Yeah. So, and what I pointed out earlier, our medical schools today, right, are evolving into these neighborhoods where everybody's collaborating, right? We're almost run out of time here. I'm going to leave you with these that I just gave you. At the bottom, we don't have time to go over these, and we weren't going to do an activity based on these anyway, but there are risks that the students will not participate actively, right? Learn sufficient course content. All right, we were talking about not learning sufficient course content. We are now doing an active learning strategy, and we're not shoveling information at them, right? That was one of my concerns. So I've got some things down here. One is for the students, the other is for a faculty member, right? What is a risk, right? Oh, I'm going to lose control in the classroom. Wow, right? Feel self-confident, right? Maybe you feel you don't possess the skills. I would say to you, pick an active learning strategy and try it in your classroom, and you will be surprised. at the results at the end of the semester in terms of what students retain, right? And the level of collaboration that goes on within that classroom, as opposed to just sitting there listening to you for 1 hour. Now, what I have before you leave today is I made copies of this. This really is these are all the different techniques, some of which I showed you up here on the screen, of active learning, and it's broken down into various buckets. So there's exercises for individual students, right? We have Q&A, question and answer. Immediate feedback type of active learning strategies. Critical thinking motivators, right? And there's lists of these different types of strategies underneath these. Cooperative learning exercises. And that's it. Now, my three favorite that I've used over the years, and I've kind of evolved in this direction. One is, again, even before I started on this journey with active learning strategies, are concept maps. They're excellent. I've gotten great results with concept maps. Thinkpair Share, and the other thing that I use today, and particularly in laboratory work, when I have labs, is the Socratic method, where I ask questions. So I'll go around to my neighborhoods, and in lab we have our lab tables. These are neighborhoods where students are collaborating. And I'll go over there and I go, oh, what was the reason why you were adding that particular reagent to that, right? And so we're having this exchange, and boy do they learn, right? They're kind of being put on the spot, but I don't make it uncomfortable for them, right? We're dialoguing, I'm asking questions, and we make it very palatable. So those are my three favorite. So I think my contact information is out there somewhere. I would like some feedback from you. If you're doing an active learning strategy, it'd be great to know what you picked and what kind of results you got. But if you're not doing it today and you're just lecturing, your students are getting shortchanged. They really are. And the evidence is there.